All right, you guys, welcome to the live hour. It's Sunday again. It's Sunday again. It's Sunday again. Who's on the show today? You guys get in the comments. Let me know who's watching today. Today I want to talk about Carney's impending trip abroad. Surprise, surprise. Uh, he is off to China this week. There are many potential implications of this trip. How is the United States going to take it? There's a lot of talk about that in the mainstream, but these are all things we'll get into a little bit today. But I wanna hear from you guys who's watching today. Beyond the China trip, McCartney's off to Qatar as well. He's also going to the World Economic Forum, and I'm sure that name makes conservatives, the ones that don't want to hurl, it makes them rub their hands together because that's lots of ammunition for the Polyev conservatives to go after him once Parliament returns on the 21st. He's going to the World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum, for those of you who are not paying, is basically a representation for many people of McCartney's elitist background, right? That's what it. That's what that's the way conservatives interpret the World Economic Forum. And McCartney, for better or for worse, has decided he is going to Davos, in the Swiss Alps, I guess. This month, he's going in the next week or so. Well, that's gonna have some consequences back home. I mean, he's Marconi. This is not new. Marconi is a WEF guy, right? This was one of the sticks that was used to beat him, that was used to attack him, I should say, in the lead up to the federal elections. Welcome to the show, Libis. Welcome to the show. How's that? I hope the new year is turning out great for you. I hope you're starting off the new year strong. I hope you're fighting the good fight. Whatever that means for you. So as I said, um, as you guys come in, shoot me a message in the comments. Hello, Abby. Hello, Abby. Welcome to the show again today. So as you guys come in, just shoot me a message in the comments, and we'll get into it. I really want to hear from you guys today. So we is there any way that Makani's trip to China this week ends well? Is there any way that this is not going to be an absolute disaster? Because I mean, on the one hand, you just, hey, Maple Boy, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here. Welcome to the show. I hope you had a great week, Maple Boy. You as well, Abby. I didn't ask that earlier. I hope you all had a great week. I hope you all had a great week. So I'm going to ask this question again. Is there any way that Makani's trip to China this week ends well? As I said earlier, off the jump, Makani is off to China this week. He's also going to go off to Qatar. He's also going to go to the World Economic Forum. Those of you who pay attention to some of the conservative rhetoric know that the World Economic Forum and Makani's attachment to the World Economic Forum is something that has been used to attack him quite a bit. And this just seems like maybe unnecessary ammunition to give the conservatives. But McCartney apparently is going to the World Economic Forum. Problematic. But I'm sure the conservatives are rubbing their hands together. But I want to hear from you guys. What would represent success for you from this trip that McCartney is taking to China? Let's start there. What does success look like from this trip that McCartney is taking to China? You guys get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this. What does McCartney need to show on this trip to China that would make this trip successful? Because now, the way I'm thinking about this is Canada's currently got we have this tariff that we've put. I mean, this was how this whole thing started. If you're not familiar with the current situation that of Canada's trade with China, they're, I think, as of last I checked, our second largest trading partner, right? But we put 100% tariffs on Chinese made electric vehicles basically as a way of supporting the United States and and their goal towards like Lebis. Lebis says success is to get enough trade deal not to be beholden to the United States. You need to help you need to make that more how do I say, less abstract is the thing there. What does success look like from Carney's trip to China this week? You guys get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. And if you're new around here, uh, don't forget to subscribe, drop a like on the video. But what does success look like to you? So I was explaining, we put 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. The primary reason for that was because the United States was doing it. And we decided to back up the United States because we thought at the time that we could, with the United States, form this integrated electric vehicle market, right? So we did that in collaboration with the United States. We don't have any significant electric vehicle production in this country. That I know, so a lot of people have been saying, oh, Canada is trying to protect domestic production. We don't really have any significant electric vehicle production in this country. So, for all intents and purposes, this was us supporting what the United States took as their foreign policy towards Chinese-made electric vehicles. And obviously, when we did that, China waited about a year and they decided to respond by putting tariffs on our canola, on our agricultural products, and that is impacting I mean, in terms of canola, that's impacting Saskatchewan a lot. And now we're at this point where there's a lot there's effectively, where we're not taking their EVs because 100% tariffs, and they're basically attacking our agricultural industry. That is very bad, especially considering we're fighting the United States on the one hand, or we're defending ourselves at the very least against the United States on the one hand, but China is also attacking us. So we're fighting the two biggest economies in the world. That is problematic anyhow you slice it. And Maple Boy says, I know they're supposed to discuss about removing the EV tariff in exchange for removing canola oil tariffs. Okay. Well, see, the problem with removing the EV tariffs is that Ontario has said, and Doug Ford has said, he does not want Canada to remove the EV tariffs. And presumably, Doug Ford says, oh, it's because they need to protect the EV industry in Ontario, or the auto manufacturing industry in Ontario. And every time someone says this to me, I'm like, what industry? What EV industry does Canada have in Ontario that it is protecting so much? We have nothing. And to be fair, our EV industry is not an established. I would say it's not an established industry. It's a bit like a nursery where we're trying to nurture this industry to create a potential industry in the future. But I don't think it's right to say we have an EV industry right now, right? So we're trying to protect them so they become something, but they're not really anything really right now in Canada, to be fair, right? But that said, Canada has invested quite a bit of money into like battery manufacturing and some of the supply chain type things that go into your electric vehicles. Those we have not seen the scale out or the build out of that just yet. But that's the whole logic. Libby says, get a new trade deal, renew the agricultural canola oil deal, and also another trade deal on any other things we might have to trade, and also shaft the United States in the process. Shafting the US is just cherry on top. You see, the problem is that when we can't we don't want to shaft the US to the and that is kind of the premise of this particular live show we have today. Marconi is between a rock and a hard place in the sense that if he does drop the EV tariffs, which we maybe can agree is mostly directed towards making the United States happy. If he does drop that, then the United States might retaliate against us. You know, yeah, we have the Kuzma negotiations coming up. Who knows how the United States is going to handle that? Who knows how they'll handle that, regardless of whether we drop the EV tariffs or not, right? Now, are we going to be allied with China to the in a way that would make fighting with the United States or going um incurring the irritation or the retribution from the United States? Are we going to collaborate with China in a way that makes that worthwhile? I don't know. Probably not. Right? There's a reason we trade with the United States so much. There's a reason we collaborate with the United States so much, right? Uh, okay. So in terms of what you're saying on whether we should just drop the EV tariffs, as I said, there is the because of the way the United States might respond to that. You know, that's one reason why they might not drop the EV tariffs altogether. That's one reason. That's one of the reasons that makes it even more complicated. But also, Canada has indicated in the past through investments under Justin Trudeau that we want to be a player in that EV industry going forward. Right? We've made the government made several investments in battery manufacturing and in the EV supply chain that, you know, if you let China in unfettered, then you create you basically kill those industries because they are never going to be able to compete with Chinese economies of they're never going to be able to compete with China in terms of scale, right? So that is the case that has been made for keeping those 100% EV tariffs on. There's also a political reason to keep those EV tariffs on, right? If Ontario truly feels like they have an EV industry to protect, if they truly do have such an industry, then Carney risks losing potentially how many seats are there in Ontario to in an election? You know, will the Liberals truly risk losing Ontario for whatever how many seats there are in Saskatchewan? You know, that's a trade that the Liberals are probably not willing to make. Actually, you said say something really important here. There is give and take, and I want to get to that now. Actually, this is how I would make a deal with China if we can't altogether remove the 100% tariffs on Chinese made electric vehicles. I would. This is just the way I would. When I think about it, this is how I would do it because I feel like, you know, the kind of deal I would make with China would be similar to sort of what the United States did with the UK. I would offer China a quota. I would be like, okay, you can import 100,000 cars into Canada per year or whatever. You can import 100,000 cars tariff free. Anything beyond that, sort of what we do with dairy from the United States. Anything beyond a certain quota, then they pay 100% tariffs. Simple as. Now, if they're willing to make a deal on those terms, I would make that deal with China. That would be my give and take. Now, what I don't want to hear is people in Ontario going, "Oh, you can't remove the EV tariffs because you expose our EV industry." What industry? We've already established that the EV industry is just it's a nursery, it's a it's a budding industry that we're trying to grow. We don't have an industry as yet. On the other hand, the canola industry and the farmers in that industry are pretty established. That is making us money in this country today. So that is how I would make a deal with China. I wouldn't, just because they're probably we probably do want to protect our budding industry. In fact, the other deal I would make with China is for them to build some of their EVs in Canada, since Donald Trump has decided he wants to take all the industries that are basically American investors mostly to the United States. I would incentivize China to come build their electric vehicles in Ontario. Build industries here in Ontario. Uh, the fact is, will that create more jobs for Canadians? I don't know that it will. It will provide it will create some jobs, but the fact is, it will most of these in those these manufacturing industries, the modern manufacturing industries, tend to be very very automated anyways. That is the way they can that is the only way to make such large scale production economical here in the West compared to Asia, right? That is the only way they do that. So Maple Boy, I don't want to. Hey, Fox Club, welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. Maple Boy, I don't want to miss out on your question here because I skipped ahead a little bit earlier. You said, um, do I think? You said I have a question. Do you think we have people have the wrong idea about the World Economic Forum? Okay, so let me set this up for you guys. So at the top of the show, I told you guys that McCartney is off on a trip this week, and he's going to China first, or he's going to China at some point in the trip. He's going to Qatar, and he's going to the World Economic Forum. And people have been, and for better or for worse, the world going to the World Economic Forum is going to serve as fodder for the conservatives to attack him when the House of Commons returns on the 21st of January, right? Because the World Economic Forum is seen as a bunch of rich fucks, a bunch of rich prats just sitting around talking about the world. Um, it's seen as a group of rich elites, right? That is what the World Economic Forum is. They gather at on the Swiss Alps, have a whole week of activities, and people tend people for McCartney, is that a visual that he wants to reinforce right now. Now, you asked whether people have the wrong idea about the World Economic Forum. I think they do, but here's the thing: PR is everything. Like, think about all the things that you have in your mind that you consider horrible right now. Now, part of the reputation the World Economic Forum has to do with the leader of the World Economic Forum. I forget his name now, and his perspective on the world. I'm trying to remember a specific one now, but you know, oh yeah, I think he was the one that made the comment about like um COVID and that being a way to reduce the population of the world or something like that. It's fucked up shit like that, you know. And you be like, wait, are you just disconnected from reality? And that is the allegation that is typically leveled against these elites, right? They're just disconnected. And for McCartney, who has been arm in arm with these elites for so long, to be fair, McCartney doesn't deny being elite himself. His whole selling point is that, well, I'm elite, but I know how the world works. All right, that is McCartney's selling point. Not that he's not elite, right? So to your question about whether we have the wrong idea about the World Economic Forum, maybe we do, but perception is everything. You know this. I mean, we saw this week a person got shot by ICE in the United States, and we saw the United States president come out and call that person that got shot a domestic terrorist. You know, we we saw eventually we saw a different video come out and say, okay, this person was a mouthy person who was maybe conducting themselves in a way that might be problematic for law enforcement, but they deserve to be shot. Again, perception is everything. Perception is everything. And even you see this week that so many people can watch the same video and come to different conclusions. A lot of people there are many people that have concluded as of right now that the shooting of this woman in Minnesota was essentially, you know, uh, this person was putting an officer in danger, and in so doing, put themselves in a position to reap the repercussions. And at the same time, there are people going, "This is murder." There's no reason why a person should end up dead for whatever reason in this situation because the officer was never in life-threatening danger. Perception is everything. Okay, Maple Boy. Um, yeah. So Maple Boy follows up and says, for me, the World Economic Forum is just a forum, and there is nothing bad about it. I quite agree with that again, but the thing is, because it is these rich fucks who gather together at this particular event, you know, that is why it is interpreted as elitist, as a gathering of people that are disconnected from reality. I actually watched part of the World Economic Forum last year, and I think Donald Trump was actually at that one. And he went off talking about how the United States will be the hottest property in a year from now. I don't know. Anyways, let's move on. Abby says the US has already floored Canada. Crude oil will soon be gone. It will be gotten from Venezuela instead of Alberta. Canada needs to be bold because even being as mousy, even being a mouse. Oh, okay. So even though Canada is being a mouse, the US still shafted us. Okay. Well, it could be worse. And I'll tell you why. And this is the difficult position that Mark Carney is in. Even when Mark Carney has said categorically Canada is not going to collaborate with China on security type things. We're going to collaborate with them on trade. We're going to collaborate with them where there is room to collaborate, but we won't collaborate with them on security. But think about it. Think about this. When the United States just attacked Venezuela, let me give you that example. The United States just invaded Venezuela and grabbed their president for what reason? United States did that because they said Venezuela was getting too close to Russia, to China, and to Iran. Now, how have they interpreted that? Who the fuck knows? Who the fuck knows? Right? Now, and when you consider the fact that you could argue the United States was the one that, in the first place, pushed Venezuela into the arms of China because of the sanctions that were imposed back in 2018 or whenever that was. You could argue the United States is pushing Canada into the arms of China right now because for our own survival, we have to collaborate more with countries like China. We have to collaborate more with countries like India, who we may or may not have like common ground with on security, for sure, not security, right? And so when you say Canada needs to be bold, it's not that simple. You can't just be like, okay, China gets unfettered access. We also we there's too much that needs to be bridged there, and there's a potential with a volatile ally. I don't even know whether to call the United States an ally right now. There's potential there that they might interpret it a certain way and take it as an excuse to attack us, right? To find a way to sabotage our economy. So it is a problem for Marconi. Anyways, Libby says with the US now having Venezuela's oil, Marconi should try to get the deal of the small percent of. Okay, so of course, so some of you are talking about Venezuela's oil here. Look, is Venezuela has a lot more problems than just being. Yes, Venezuela has a lot of oil, but if you know anything about all the infrastructure deficit that Venezuela has right now, you'll know that they're kind of a little ways, if almost probably a decade away from being able to replace significantly Canada's supply of oil, right? So yeah, I don't. People, I think the capture of Venezuela by the United States, I think it's mostly focused on controlling that resource because China is in there and China has their hands in there, and the United States wants to be able to again impede China's march. I think that's more what this is about, as against like I know Donald Trump tried to get the CEOs of the oil companies in, and he promptly got a response that they are not willing to invest in infrastructure in Venezuela in the climate that is uncertain. Right? They couldn't. Some of these, I think it was the CEO of ExxonMobil that told Donald Trump flat out, like it is it would be difficult to for these companies to make a business case after they've invested all this money in countries like Canada to just up and go and put their money in a less certain situation in Venezuela, right? So I would be careful with this whole idea that Venezuela is just here to replace Alberta oil. Okay, so there is that. Okay, so let me get what's the next comment here. Okay, so okay, so where was I? Let's see. Abby says McCartney has a lot to do. He is between a rock and a hard place. He has to diversify very hard. And that is the goal, right? The goal is for Canada to double our non-US trade in over the next decade. That is McCartney's stated goal. And just to complete your comment there, Abby says Canada must be loyal to one superpower because Donald Trump has showed Canada what happens when you do. Okay. Yeah. So McCartney has to thread this line where you have to not give the United States an excuse to sabotage you more because people are going to blame you on that side. But you also have to establish this relationship elsewhere with China because yeah, it is the second largest economy in the world. You have to increase your access there, right? So that is the problem McCartney faces this week. Um, and Fox Club says is oh okay. So Maple Boy says ice has gone out of hand. So you're referencing the fact that the shooting of that lady in Minnesota that I was talking about earlier. Well, I would imagine Maple Boy, and this is what my perception from your from your comments here. Do you, in what? How about this? Help me out. In what way do you think ice has gotten out of hand? And I'll comment to see. I'll say whether I agree or not with your as ice gotten out of hand. I want you guys to get in the comments. Let me know in what way you feel like ice is overreaching and overstepping, and then we'll get back to that and talk a bit more. But I want to stay on topic. Fox Club says, is our perception of worldviews misled by our leaders? 100% it is misled by our leaders, especially if you are somebody who's a fanatic or somebody who hero worships like a lot of people do in this country. If you're somebody who will take the words of a person, like for example, there are people that will take verbatim what a Donald Trump says and never question it. There are people that will take verbatim what McCartney says because he's the great big economist and never question it. There are people that will take verbatim what Pierre Poilievre says and never question it. And they, irrespective of whatever the other side does, they will never see the value. So yes, our perception of the world, especially in a world where people are lazy in finding their own conviction, it is misled by our leaders, Fox Club. I agree with that. So Maple Boy says, um, okay, so For me, even if you like or not, Carney is important to give the opportunity to is important. It is important to give Carney the opportunity to change your mind. I agree with that, Maple Boy, and I say this all the time on the show. Libby says you claim okay. Here comes the big attack, you guys. You claim Venezuela isn't stable, but that might just be now. Canada is stable, but they don't develop what we have. Okay, well, presumably, like, here's the thing: you say Venezuela is stable, and you're saying it is just now. It is when you think about it. Why? I'll give you a few examples here. Yes, Venezuela is you can say, okay, maybe Venezuela might be stable next year. Maybe it's just a situation with now. You're wrong, because when you think about it, what's his name? Maduro, even with Maduro gone from government right now, his entire governing apparatus is still leading that country. So I don't know if you expect less corruption, or you expect, more focus on developing the economy, or expect it drive a certain in a different direction. You would be wrong. But let's assume the United States even controls Venezuela over the next 3 years, or whatever that President Trump will remain in office. Well, what happens after? What happens when the United States foreign policy changes? That is not a situation that, I mean, Canada has a different kind of situation where our investment policy is slightly different depending on which prime minister, right? Where you might expect a Pierre Poilievre to aggressively try and invest in oil and gas, you would expect, or whatever. And you might see maybe a Justin Trudeau as somebody who, and again, this is also one of those perception things. People say Justin Trudeau was anti-pipeline, and yet he bought a pipeline, all right? You know, he bought a pipeline. You can say maybe without question about Justin Trudeau is he did not do enough to develop our critical minerals, our position strategically as a critical mineral supplier. I can agree with that. So your statement about Venezuela, being possibly stable in the future. Well, you don't know that, and you don't know, and also it's like, these companies. How do you invest in a country that you don't know? It's like people that say, "Oh, there are many opportunities." I'll use Africa as an example. A lot of people say, "Oh, there are many opportunities. Countries like Nigeria have abundant resources. Go there." Well, you know, I, this is also a problem that China has, right? Because China, for example, can just change their foreign policy at the drop of a hat, or their domestic policy, I mean, at the drop of a hat. They can just be like, okay, you know what? That particular industry, we want that to be nationalized, or we want to manipulate that particular industry. That is a risk for investors. It is a risk for investors. So I would be careful with with the idea that Venezuela is somehow going to magically transform into a stable economy that can rival what Canada is able to deliver. So Libby says Canada has crude oil. It is not very developed. They have rare metals and some mining, but the industry isn't even that developed. What does Canada have that they are number one in the world? Canada is number one in hockey. What do you mean by that? What do you mean? What does Canada have that Canada is number one in? I will not take this slander. What is this? No, Canada's number one in hockey, and what else are we number one at? We're number one at poutine. Yes, yes, yes. We're number one at what else are we number one at? Well, we're one of the biggest countries in the world, if not the biggest. So guys, you, I will not have this slander, guys. I will not have this slander of Canada. Uh, so Libby says what? Okay, so what Canada export is number one in the world? Is canola? Is okay? You gotta help. You guys gotta help me with these with these comments. Try. Yeah, exactly. That is the one I was forgetting. Yes, Fox Club. Our mining industry is huge, but it could be bigger. Arguably, it could be bigger for what this country has in terms of critical minerals. But thank you for the assist there, Fox Club. Um, okay, so Libby says not the biggest, but what can Canada sell? Trust me, we can sell our critical minerals. We can our mining could definitely be bigger than what it is, and it is already huge. It is already huge. Um, Fox Club says, will Justin Trudeau try to return to politics like his father did? I think Justin Trudeau is balls deep in some other situation right now. I'm not going to tell you what situation I'm talking about, but I think I think Justin Trudeau is fully committed to another endeavor at the moment. So, and there is money to be made in I mean, what is he going to do? He's going to probably going to get back to public speaking. He made billions of politics. I don't think Justin Trudeau comes back to politics, guys. I think at some point he's going to do a lot more public speaking when maybe his hopefully for him is his term in office ages well. You'll see him give talks and do a bit more in that particular direction. I don't think Justin Trudeau is going to return to politics. It's just it's not. I don't think it is a sensible move. Um, so okay, so Maple Boy says, uh, okay, you said an ICE agent deported illegal immigrants. For me, I call it out of hand. Imagine if Canada had become the 51st state and we have ICE in this country, it would be terrible. Here's the thing. I'm sure there are people in this country. There are people. Fox Club says Trudeau is on to the next season of Dancing with the Stars. That would not surprise me. That would not surprise me in the least if Justin Trudeau were to go do a Dancing with the Stars thing. Okay, so I want to get back to what you were saying, Maple Boy. I can assure you there are people in this country who would welcome what ICE is doing right now. Now, Canada is deporting people in the thousands right now, but there are people who, based on the level of the problems of Canada's infrastructure, our issues with temporary immigration, who would welcome an ICE being able to actually execute on deportations and getting people out of this country when they've overstayed their visa or when they're not legally when they're not here legally, right? And this is turning into a bit more of a problem now that ICE is so doing what they're doing in the United States. We're getting people coming through the border from the United States to Canada, and we get a lot of people claiming sometimes bogus asylum claims, sometimes legit asylum claims, but you know some people there I would argue there are people in this country that would welcome ICE. Now, are Canadians cold enough to accept the methods that ICE is using in the United States? I don't know. Have I seen Maple Boy says, have I seen the protest in Minneapolis? It is crazy, guys. It is crazy. It is absolutely crazy. But ultimately, will it actually lead anywhere? Will it change anything about how ICE comports itself in the streets and the kind of sometimes disproportionate force that they use? I don't think it will under Donald Trump. And that is why I think one of my reckless predictions for the United States was that I think the Republicans are probably gonna lose big in the midterms. Now, we will see if that loss is going to change significantly Donald Trump's behavior over the next 2 years that will come after the midterms. Who knows, right? Okay, so where were we? Where did I miss? So Abby says Justin Trudeau isn't entirely useless. He just focused more on social justice and giving people free money. Kumbaya, yada yada yada. That is a wild comment, Abby. All good, but economic growth is needed to sustain the Trudeau dream. I think. See, there is a. I think there was a stat I saw that basically Justin Trudeau was successful in raising the floor of uh, of of Canadians because, and I'll explain what I mean there. Before Justin Trudeau came in, I don't know if I'm remembering this stat correctly, but that's what happens on this live show. You're at the mercy of how my brain can remember things. But before Justin Trudeau took office, we had a we had very a lot of disparity between the rich and the poor. And Justin Trudeau largely was successful in making it so that yes, there were still poor people, but the poor had a little bit more. Now, with a lack of creation of jobs and investments that have fled the country, well, he created a different problem as you, which is what you're alluding to there in terms of the economic growth. So, Libby's, what can Canada sell? Canada has successfully sold people like Seth Rogen and the Weekend and Ryan Reynolds, but there are also critical minerals that we can get into the hands of the world. The world needs our critical minerals. The world needs our oil. The world needs our oil. And that's why I'm not mad at Carney looking at the at LNG projects. Hopefully they don't get held up at conception. Hopefully we actually get these products to market sooner rather than later. Okay. So what else is here? What else is here? Oh, by the way, if you guys are new to the channel, if there's anybody in the chat new to the channel, everybody's allowed to comment. It's not just a few people. And everybody's allowed to drop a comment. I will address whatever things you guys want to talk about. So get in the comments, drop a like on the videos, subscribe to the channel. So what else is here? Okay, so Libby says Canada needs to develop its mining industry more. I hear Canada has uranium and some nuclear stuff. Yet, I don't think nuclear power is developed. That's not true, actually. Part of the nation building projects that Makani announced was the Darlington Small Modular Reactor Facility. Um, that is actually developing our nuclear capacity as well. So that is not true to say we're not trying to develop our nuclear capacity. We're not developing it towards weapons. We're developing it towards nuclear energy, towards being able to power things like data centers and those kinds of things. Um, okay, so Fox Club says if Perry runs for president and wins, would that make Justin the first lady? Oh, jeez, my goodness, I don't even know what to say. I'm just gonna drive past that, bro. Like, what are you talking about? um, um, Fox Club said it is cold enough outside Canada for Canada. Fox Club, please tell me that that's not that is a dad joke. Are you a dad? I hope you're a dad. That would be too good not to be a dad joke. That's a dad joke right there. And Fox Club said it is cold enough outside for Canada to have ice. Okay, so Libby says we're the number one exporter of canola oil in the world. Yet we shafted that industry for the EV dream. Another thing is that not many countries have heard of canola oil, and this canola is cheap in comparison. Well, I guess the question for people is that is the canola industry going to survive 20 years or 50 years from now? And that is the fundamental trade-off that for example with oil as well, that's the fundamental trade-off that or argument you should have when you want to when you make these decisions. That is what McCartney has to make a decision about. It's not just about today and the revenue. Yes, canola is making bank right now, potentially makes bank today, but the EV dream is banking on where will the world be tomorrow. That is how investment works. Investment is not about today. Investment is a bet on the future, right? So it's not just about when you talk about canola, it's not you have to look beyond today. And anyways, that's the fundamental point. Look beyond today. Um so Maple Boy says those would welcome ice. Those who would welcome ice, okay, understand how horrible ice is. I think that's what you're trying to say there. And that is true. I mean, they do have a nasty job, but again, you have to understand that it is one thing uh, that I don't want to get too far into the United States talk, but it is one thing to say ICE is bad, right? But at the same time, and I agree, we're a country with the conscience. That is what Canada is, and sometimes our conscience is can be an impediment in progress, in the sense that we want to be the world's conscience on climate change. We want to not trade with some of the biggest economies in the world, like India and China, because of their human rights record, even when sometimes it has nothing to do with us. India is special because they actually killed a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. But sometimes I feel like we want to be the conscience of the world to our own detriment. Sometimes we cannot, and I say this all the time, we have to walk and chew gum at the same time, right? We have to. If it is in the current climate, we have to adapt or die. That is those are the options Canada has. We have to adapt or die. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. But would Canadians welcome ICE? As I said, some people would. Some people who want to see better control over our immigration, better enforcement of deportation, well, of deportation, and of like people's allowable term in Canada. I'm sure some of those people would not mind a little bit of ice. But you're right, there is a certain brutality to it. There's a certain, lack of due process that the Trump administration has taken in order to prosecute these things that maybe wouldn't play well in Canada, because we're people of conscience. One of the things we love about Canada. Um, okay, so Fox Club says Trudeau was fresh and young when he came in. Yes, yes, and he was able to get a lot of people to thirst trap over him, men and women alike. I wonder who the next potential thirst trap is. I predicted, and those some of you who have seen my reckless predictions, remember I said that one of the Moroni kids, they're not kids anymore, they're older than I am, but but one of the Moroni kids is probably going to step up, probably for the Conservatives at some point, or at least start to make a case in 2026. So we'll see. Maybe that's the that's the new Trudeau. That's the new Trudeau version, I guess. Um, Libby says, Libby's, you really want to talk? You really want to talk about about canola and Canada? Okay, I should run through the comments because I'm pretty slow here. So Libby says Canada needs to develop what it has: mining, crude oil, agriculture, minerals. We need to develop, expand, market what we have. Okay, Fox Club says, yes, I'm a dad. 4 boys. Whoa, brother. That's a full court. That's a full court. Libby says, I know nuclear power is part of the nation building, but do you know how long before it will be effected? It is in effect. It's been built. Um, Canada is now reacting after the United States shafted them. They slept for several years, and let themselves go. Yes, we did get complacent. I agree with that. Um, Lebi says canola oil is food. Food food survives all through the years. Well, you're not what you're not considering is with things like climate change and global warming. That industry may not always be viable. It may not always you might not necessarily be able to. That industry might not sustain so well as the climate gets harsher and harsher. That's, for example, some one of the things you need to consider. So you're saying, are you saying the world will stop eating in the future? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there are risks. That there are risks with that industry in the future. So that is why you go. And also, it's also like in terms of potential return, you could argue the EV industry has the potential to make us a lot more revenue compared to the canola industry. That's another way to look at it. Okay, so Foxcroft says watch the police body cams. It can be difficult to watch, but gives you a better understanding of what police and ICE agents have to deal with. Yes, and in that video, I think a lot of people saw a very mouthy person who was blocking. This is factual, was blocking the path of the ICE agents. Now, did the ICE agent follow due protocol? Did that have to escalate to the extent that he shot a person, mouthy or not? I'm not convinced that it needed to escalate to that particular level. I'm not convinced that he had to do that, right? I am I am not convinced that it needed to escalate to the level where an ICE agent is gunning down a person. Now, when you watch and here's the thing as well. You talk about police body cam footage of this particular incident, Fox Club. The body cam footage has not been released. Do you know what has been released? This officer, instead of paying attention to what is going on, had a phone up and was recording while the incident was unraveling. Now tell me, like, that surely cannot be protocol. I guess they don't have body cam stuff in body cam for ICE. I guess they don't, but I would imagine that when you're confronting a situation where there is potential for escalation, you do not have your phone up, right? You do not. I mean, the officer in question was standing in front of the vehicle as well. Should you be doing that? There are several like de-escalation protocols as well, and even then, in this particular video, you see the lady actually say to the guy, to the officer, "I'm not mad at you." So to then marry that and say, oh, she then 5 seconds later took an aggressive action to use her car as a weapon is not right. I think that is a blatant lie. So that's my opinion, having seen different angles of this. Did she hit the ICE officer? Probably not. Not to the extent deserving to die. And that is my opinion of that. But anyways, Abby says the okay. Abby says the police came to him and shot him anyways. Why did they kill? Who's him? Maybe you mean her. Okay, I'm not really sure what you mean. Um, Maple Boy says I want Carney to have his majority because things can move much faster without interruption. You know what? I personally, I think I want McCartney to have a majority because I don't want excuses. The excuse the liberals keep giving right now is that, well, bills are not getting through parliament, and who can deny that? Because obviously we know how combative Pierre Polyev can be. We know sometimes he bites his own nose off in order to spite his face. This is all things that we know that Polyev can do. This is an excuse that the liberals can continue to hammer. So I would like to see the liberals. I don't want to see an election. I want a floor crossing. I'll tell you that. I want a floor crossing, and that is my honest opinion on this. I want a floor crossing, and I want the liberals to get a majority, and then they have zero excuses. They have zero excuses. That is what I want to see. Libby says the canola industry will always be viable. Even with global warming, there are new ways for agriculture in global warming, like hydroponics, vertical farming. Please read on it. It is not going anywhere. Again, will it yield? Does it have this the comparable potential, the EV industry, compared to canola industry? That is another way of looking at it. I gave you global warming as an example. Okay, there are other ways to look at this as well. That's like comparing. I mean, it's like think about it. It's like comparing, agriculture to commercial agriculture with canola oil to the potential of oil and gas. Not the same, right? So I'm just giving you my thoughts on that, and that's I'm just telling you some ways you could think about that. Okay, so we've got a new commenter in the chat here, Zener Rockstar. That is a wilding name, Rockstar. Rockstar says Venezuela crude will not be replacing Canadian crude anytime soon. Western Canadian Select is tightly integrated into the United States refining systems. Well, you're right about the first part of that, Rockstar. Yes, Venezuelan crude will not be replacing Canadian crude anytime soon because Venezuela has a significant infrastructure deficit. To be fair, so does Canada. Well, never mind that, right? But Venezuela has significant infrastructure deficit that will make that difficult for them to pull off. Here's where you're wrong. You say that Western Canadian Select is tightly integrated into the United States refining systems. Well, what is the Canadian product? The Canadian product is heavy crude. That is exactly what Venezuela has, right? So they have the product to replace Canadian oil. They just have that a significant infrastructure deficit that will make that problematic. Okay, just thought I'll point that out for you. So Maple Boy says, okay, so not really. They have no proof. I guess I took too long there, so I'm not really sure the context of that. Rockstar says, Venezuelan oil is extra heavy, often heavier and dirtier than Canadian oil, with higher sulfur and metal content. U.S. Gulf Coast refineries are optimized for Canadian-style heavy crude. Fair enough. Fair enough. For sure, it for all of this to say, and I guess what we're coming at, we're coming at this to the same conclusion here, that it will take at least a decade, in an industry that doesn't want to move, that doesn't want to make any sudden moves right now because of the potential that there might not be a return, right? And so is the United States industries and their refineries and their infrastructure going to move towards taking oil from Venezuela? Probably not. That is the long and short of what we're trying to say here. Yeah. Foxlove says, I'm getting tired of the floor crossings. Well, see, as I said, I do not mind the floor crossings. I've explained my logic for this. Here's why I don't mind the floor crossings. These floor crossers are going to have to face the voting base eventually. So cross the floor if you want, but you better be right. If the government doesn't deliver, if McCartney gets his majority, he has zero excuses. Now, if we go to an election now, McCartney can say, well, we've been impeded by the fact that we didn't have a majority, and this is why we didn't deliver on this, and this. I don't want any excuses. So if the Liberals are not able to deliver on their mandates, I want to be able to say, had every single thing available to them and did not do it. Okay, that's my thought on that. But maybe they won't even need a floor crossing. There is potentially, and this was a video I made earlier in the week, there is one conservative seat as of now going up in the by-election cycle this year, and that is the seat That is Matt Jeanerou's seat. Matt Jeanerou's seat in Edmonton Riverbend is up. Now, ordinarily speaking, this seat is appears to be a safe. It is a safe conservative riding. However, in this last election cycle, the Liberal candidate Mark Minenko was only, I think, about 6% was the differential between him and Matt Jeanerou in the last election. So it is not inconceivable that the Liberals could take that seat now that Matt Jeanerou is out of the picture. So consider that. A lot of people are saying, oh, the Liberals want an undemocratic majority. There is a chance that the people of Edmonton Riverbend could give the Liberals that majority. All things being equal, if the Liberals win all the 3 seats or so on their side that are going up for in the by-election cycle as well. Maple Boy says the plan for Marconi's long. Oh, okay. So Maple Boy says we will see the results of Marconi's long term plan in a few years. And this is something I always tell you. I always tell you guys. Are people are only willing to be what you're saying. You're saying in a few years. You have to realize that patience is only patience is a luxury. Patience is a luxury that you can give when you can feed your family. Maybe you're not able to take 3 trips a year, but patience is a luxury. Okay? If people continue to struggle with the affordability crisis that we are right now, struggle with finding jobs, I don't think people are going to wait the few years that you think. Now, is McCartney doing some long-term stuff that could potentially pay off? You know what? I agree that McCartney is I can agree that McCartney has taken a set of steps that may pay off in the long term. Like, I like his focus on growing our critical minerals. I don't know what is going to happen with Alberta oil and the diversification of that. We will see. But I like the perspective on critical minerals. I like the focus on potentially on AI, because that seems to be where the world is going. And we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. I'll run through your comments because there is one more thing I want to talk about before we get out of here. It's actually already 5. So what is this? Libby says, if you want to give me example for canola being gone, you are so fixated on canola, Libby. You're so fixated on canola. Oh, okay. Agriculture. You say agriculture isn't going anywhere as long as people eat. It is here. It is here to stay. Okay. 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 Fox Club says we should rebuild our gold reserves. We have apparently sold off our gold in recent years. Yes. Yeah, I mean, gold is a good shout. I mean, we should definitely build a strategic reserve of gold. Some might argue maybe Bitcoin. I don't know. How do you guys feel about cryptocurrencies? Anyways, that's a topic for another day. Okay. Libby's still on the canola oil. For God's sake. Libby says, if I know this was your button, I would have just mentioned everybody in the chat. I guess canola oil is Libby's trigger word. that is the trigger word for Libby's. So nobody say canola oil in the chat. He's gonna get triggered. Canola oil or vegetable oil is the major ingredient in mayonnaise and some other food. Canola is here to stay. It can be used, oh my God, it can be used in beauty. The government needs to expand. Okay. My stand is it shouldn't have been shafted. You're a great defender of the canola industry. You should definitely reach out to Saskatchewan. I think they need a spokesperson. You are a very passionate defender of the canola industry. I love it. So Libby says, is this a canola comment again? Can you be absolutely sure that Canada can compete? can compete in the EV industry. Well, that is finally an amazing point on the EV industry. Is the EV industry is even if we did build a truly Canadian EV industry, is Canada ever going to be able to compete? That is a great point. And the answer is probably no, because China is so far ahead in terms of economies of scale. They're so far ahead in terms of just how established their supply chain is, and the supply of labor and all those things that we, and to be fair, the United States as well, may never be able to compete with China there. But beyond being able to compete for price, there is also the security perspective, which is what a lot of the conservatives will tell you. But to be fair, I think I've always said that is pretty dumb, because I mean, if you allow your iPhones as they are currently to be made in China, and you carry those with you everywhere, I mean, what is the national security situation with allowing your EVs to be made in China, right? Anyways, Abby says, um, hearing that law enforcement are being trained for 2 months and 3 months is a joke. Any law enforcement should be trained 1 year at least. It is lives at risk. The people scream. This people scream trigger. What? Okay. Yes, and that is something that has been exposed with this particular incident in Minnesota. The fact that these ICE agents are not extensively trained for people who are going to be carrying weapons and interacting with potential hostiles. I put that in air quotes there. Potential hostiles in the community. For people that are going to be interacting with the community, they don't receive enough training to deal with that. That is correct. Um, Libby says, I don't want the Liberals to have a majority, actually. I like the way they are competing for it now. It is fun, it is drama. It will be boring if if all the Liberal motions are passed. Well, I think you will give up your entertainment. You say it is boring, but I'm willing to give up my entertainment if that means that Canadians like me are able to get more jobs, get more get higher paying jobs, and get more, and we can solve this affordability issue. So that is my point. uh yeah, so Libby's is reminding me it's 5 p.m. I know, Libby's, but you guys have so many comments, and I don't like to leave comments behind. So I will get through the comments, and I'll say, there is one more thing, as I said, I wanted to get through before the end of the show. um Foxlove says, I feel crypto has fallen off. I'm not an expert. Maybe we can do a show on crypto later, and just have a chat about where people are in terms of crypto. I'm not selling you anything, okay? Just a little discussion. But wait, let's leave that for another day. The Bees is a big defender of agriculture. I get it. I could see that in the passion that you were coming at us with. Zena Rockstar says, Carney's primary goal is to repair, restore our relationship with China. Not that I'm a fan. We've had years of tension following the 2018 Meng Wanzhou arrest and retaliatory detentions. Yes. In case you're not familiar, in 2018, Canada detained the CFO of Huawei at the request of the United States. Just one of the many problems that Canada has followed the United States into, and then we end up with the short end of the stick. But we detained Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei CFO, and then they detained the two Michaels, and that led to severe diplomatic fractures between the two countries. That was even before we imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. So we've had a history now, as we do, to be fair, with India as well, of bad blood between both countries. Yeah. Okay, so Fox Club says electricity is too expensive in Canada. Yeah. I mean, is it too expensive though? I mean, we've got cheap hydro. I don't know if I would say electricity compared to where. Are you saying compared to China? We've got cheap hydro, right? And if we get the nuclear on board as well, it won't be so expensive. I'm not sure what you mean there, Fox Club. Fox Club says cowboy ice agents. Okay, so Libby says, according to your answer, Canada won't be able to compete fairly in the industry in the EV industry. Case closed. Stick to canola that you can compete in. Well, there's a reason countries like, as I said, it's they're beyond just being able to beyond protecting our EV industry. There is also the potential value of the industry, and as of right now, I think the consensus is that there is higher potential value for the EV industry if it grows compared to the value that we have for canola right now. Yes, canola is good right now, but for for the industry that will grow, that we will develop into in the next, or we plan to, or we want to try and develop into in the next 20 years, maybe at that point the EV industry is better. Who knows? Anyways, last comment here before I get to the last thing I wanted to talk to you about. Levine has told me twice now that it is 5 p.m. Are you increasing the time so I can plan accordingly? Bye, bye, bye. Okay, 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 okay. Okay, I was just enjoying having a conversation with you guys today. Last thing I wanted to talk about. Um, last thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah, Fox Club says I. I don't know what I mean either. I'm just trying to keep this. I'm just trying to keep this going. I'm having fun. Oh yes, and to be fair, that's the same situation with me. That's why I'm talking so much, even if we're past the time. But I want to talk about. I want to. Abby is like, bye, sayonara, ciao, au revoir. Okay, okay, okay. Why are you showing off your multilingualism? Anyways, last thing I wanted to talk about. Carney is taking Michael Marr with him to China. He's taking Michael Marr with him to China. If you don't know who Michael Marr is the MP for Markham Unionville, the MP that crossed the floor in December, the guy that went to the Christmas party for the Conservatives and then went to the Liberal Christmas party, crossed the floor from the Conservatives to the Liberals. And people people have been saying, well, the Conservatives have been saying, do the Liberals have no values? Do they have no scruples? Is this the bribe? Is this the bribe that the is this the bribe that the Liberals offered Michael Marr to make him cross the floor? I I'll say this. I think this is much ado about nothing. I think this is one of those things where, why did Michael Marr cross the floor? Why did a lot of these? Why did Chris Tremont cross the floor? Chris Tremont said he crossed the floor because, well, I mean, a lot of people say he crossed because he didn't get the speakership because he wanted to be Speaker of the House. But one of the things that some of these people that have crossed the floor have said is that they feel like their skills are not being used. Like there's not a lot of like teamwork going on in the Conservative Party. Now, I would think Marconi is going off to China. He is going into potentially a terrain that is going into potentially a very high stakes situation with China. He is under pressure to come back with a deal. I don't know if he will come back with a deal, but he's under pressure to come back with something. He's going into really unfamiliar territory in China. I know some people will tell me about all these dealings with Brookfield, but in this capacity, unfamiliar territory, he's going into a situation that he doesn't have all the information about, right? Well, there's also the language barrier and all of that, and the cultural barrier and all those things. Um, cue the new entry. Tang Peng Ku says Ma going to China to collect his bonuses and incentives. As I said, that it was almost like I called I just knew that was coming. And to be fair, I don't think that I think that Mark going is a good thing because he has experience in business. He's got definitely will bridge the language barrier. I think from it's like having a tour guide. He's basically like a tour guide in this particular situation. I don't see the problem with it, but I can understand that my conservative friends want to paint it as Mark Carney and Michael Ma going off to collect new orders from their Chinese overlords. And Zena Rockstar is actually buttressing my point here, saying Michael Ma uh was was raised in a business. What? You guys gotta help me. You gotta proofread what you type. It makes it so hard. Anyways, you're saying Michael Marr a business executive who was raised in Hong Kong. It makes sense to bring him along. I agree with that. I agree, and that is my perspective as well. Obviously, my conservative friends would try and paint it as as they want to paint Michael Marr as a villain. Understandably, he did cross the floor, and they want to paint this as the them going to get receiving fresh orders from the Chinese overlords. Libby says Mark Carney will learn Mandarin the way he learned French. He should try to stand with Xi Jinping. Oh my God! He should try to stand with Xi Jinping's opposition. What? What? Okay, there we go. That's what I'm saying. Tan Kanku says, and Carney's going there to raise more money to buy more MPs. That is so funny. That is so funny. I hope he's not just there to raise more money to buy more MPs. I hope he's there and they're able to actually get the tariffs on Canadian canola removed. As I said, the way I would make a deal with China, even if there is a sort of a happy medium, if the Chinese are game for this. Um, oh, has okay. Fox Club is asking, has Michael Ma answered why he crossed? Michael Ma said he didn't say too much, but what he said was he crossed because he felt that he could do more as part of the governing party, and that's kind of I think that was what he said. Yeah, Chris Dontremont was a little bit more forthright. So he was a little bit more. He showed it. He told a bit more about his reasons. That's the word I was looking at. I guess that's one way to say what I wanted to say and was struggling very very badly to say. Anyways, the way I would make a deal with China is knowing that we can't remove, and I know the liberals won't remove or I don't think I should say I shouldn't say I know. I don't think the liberals at this point will remove the 100% EV tariffs because that just there's a political price to pay for that in Ontario, and Doug Ford has said no, right? And I think that we know that the liberals this would not be the first time the liberals have made a decision based on political price, right? It's sort of like the gun buyback program and the fact that they only did that because that played well in Quebec. This is kind of one of those situations where the liberals will try and defend their base. Now, the happy medium there for to save the EV industry and still preserve the canola industry, if China agrees, I think the deal would be to give China a quota. Say maybe 100,000 cars they can import they can send to Canada yearly or whatever. 100,000 cars or something, make those tariff free, and then anything above that you get 100% tariffs. That is the deal I would make with China, and they in China should drop their canola tariffs. That is the deal I would make with China. Zena Rockstar, thank you for your subscription. I really appreciate that. For those of you who are new here, and for Zena Rockstar's benefit here, we have these live shows every Sunday. We discuss whatever the topics of the day are, and these shows are about you guys. You guys get in the comments. We discuss. We have a little back and forth. It does not matter if you're a conservative or a liberal. Does not matter. If you're NDP as well, that does not matter. We welcome everybody here. We try and be respectful of one another as well. Once in a while, we have a few crazes. That's okay. But I try and keep it decently cordial here. We talk to each other and we just share our perspective. So for those of you who are new, as I said, do what Zen Rockstar just did. Subscribe, drop a like on the video, invite your friends to come have these discussions with us. Libby says, should Canada as a whole pay for Ontario's shit? And please, what will Ontario pay from from removing the EV tariff on China? I'm a little lost on what Doug Ford keeps saying. Ontario is Canada's most productive. I shouldn't say productive. Productive is the wrong word. They're Canada's biggest industry, right? And the auto manufacturing, auto jobs is the biggest industry in Ontario. So yes, you do have to take heed when Ontario speaks. Now, is it sustainable for the country to continue to shaft, and to borrow your word, Libby's, to continue to shaft Western Canada for the benefit of the Atlantic provinces? Probably not. But the liberals are the liberals are going to continue doing that because that is what keeps them in office. That is what keeps them in power. Anyways, I'll end with this. This is probably our longest show, guys. No, this is not our longest show. I think our longest show is when we did the election and we were live for like, I think we were live that day for like 4 hours. That was I had one of my buddies come on. Yeah, and Zena Rockstar says 38% of our GDP. So yes, if Ontario sneezes, Canada catches cold. So just know that it is not as easy as just dismissing Ontario just like that. Same thing, you can't just dismiss Quebec or even or Alberta, although the country continues to do that, which to the annoyance of the Alberta separatists. Um, so that is a good thing to add there, Zen Rockstar. Fox Club says if they could work out a deal with China where China sends the parts and we assemble a Chinese Canadian electric vehicle. Well, see, I was thinking about that too. I would like a deal where China builds those cars here in Canada. That's a good point. Here's one thing that you might not have factored in, and I appreciate maybe you're not familiar with the EV industry. But here's one. This is one thing you might not have factored in. It may look like bringing the Chinese assembly to Canada will improve our industry here, but is it worth the trade? Like, are we actually going to create as many jobs as you would expect if we traded the EV industry? Sorry, not the EV, the auto manufacturing industry we have now for a Chinese style, EV assembly industry. Well, the problem there is that these modern industries are very automated. So we might not gain as many jobs as you might think, right? And at that point, if they're making it here, you have effectively created an open market, and you know all the stuff that comes with that. So it might not. It's not. I would like to see those cars built here in Canada. I can agree with that. Now, again, this is one of the big issues that I think a lot of people have right now is the fact that, well, if China is building their cars here, how is the United States going to take that? And that is the fundamental difficulty that Canada has to navigate right now, right? It's not, as I know some people want to say, well, F the United States, if they have decided to push us into the arms of China, why not embrace China and have them come over here? It is not that easy. It is just not that easy. Yeah. So what do I want? And this will be the final word I give on this. What do I expect Marconi to come back with? Ideally, I would like to see those canola and agri-food tariffs removed. That is what I would like to see in his trip from China. We will see if that materializes. On a trip to Qatar, which is also within this leg of Makani's trip, I would like to see some investment dollars come back to Canada with Makani. That is what that is what I would like to see Makani come back with. On his trip to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, as I said, I don't know why he's doing that. He's just giving the conservatives more fodder to and more things to attack him on. Anyways, Libby says evening automation needs even automation needs maintenance crews. They will need quality control and assurance. Yes, but you can't compare an industry that is run with 100,000 people to an industry that only needs 10,000 people. That is my point. Okay, that is my point. Zena Rockstar says we can't compete with assembly. We could, however, help with critical minerals extractions. Think batteries. Yes, that is a very, very, very good point, Zena Rockstar. And but we we can compete with critical minerals, but we can't compete with batteries. That is the distinction I will make for you. Uh, because our economies of scale when it comes to even the making of batteries is not we're not going to be competitive with the Asian manufacturers, with Chinese manufacturers. We're not going to be able to do that. Do you know why Chinese EVs are so cheap? Apart from the fact that um okay. So Zena Rockstar says I'll just take your comments together there, and then I'll round up for the show today. Uh, Zena Rockstar says we can't, or we also can't sell their cars in North America, maybe third markets. Okay. Kanku says at the end you can find China's EVs at Dollarama. What? Tenkonku, what are you on about? What are you on about? Anyways, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. This is a full 30 minutes over today. But you guys have been hilarious. You guys have been so funny. But you have been tremendous today. I want to roll the credits. Thank you, Tenkonku, for your comments today. Thank you, Zena Rockstar, for your comments today. Libby's Fox Club. Fox Club. Thank you for your all your contributions to the comment section today. Abby_9, thank you for your comments today. Who else was here? Maple Boy, you ran off. I didn't hear from you for a little bit, but thank you for joining the show. Who else was here? Okay, I think I got everybody. Thank you for joining the show. Uh, Yeah, Zena Rockstar has just awarded to conclude the comment of the night. At the end, you can find China's EVs at Dollarama. That is the comment of the night, as awarded by Zena Rockstar. And I will get this last comment. So we can't compete EVs. Okay. We can't also compete on batteries. Our EV industry is a joke. You guys are not going to let me go today. Foxtrot just get in there. Okay, so Foxtrot says all these batteries are going to end up back in our environment. Look at all the weed garbage since we legalized it. Oh my god, I could go off on this. But to be fair about batteries though, here's where I don't think you're or something that I don't think you're factoring in, Fox Club. Currently there is a lot of extensive research. I know this because I mean, as I've told you guys before, I mean my actual career is in the battery industry, and I know there's a lot of work going into the recycling of battery components now. So I wouldn't be so quick to assume that batteries are just going to go back into the environment. There is a lot of development in the tech to, well, I mean, one of the budding industries in EV manufacturing right now is one where some people are exploring the potential to, because I don't know, you might not know this, but when your EV batteries die, it's not because they're or when they need to be replaced, it's not because they're all the way dead. So some people are exploring using those batteries for second life applications, like like your battery storage applications, right? For example, just to give you the short answer there. So I wouldn't just assume that these batteries are going to end up in the environment. All right. Before you guys drop something else that'll make me talk a little bit more, I'm gonna get out of here now. Subscribe if you're new to the channel.